Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. In this video, we will begin our interior part for our project example. As you have seen in our demo video that we have released a few days ago, we will learn how to model and texture furniture using Blender and Quixel Mixer. So let's get started. Our choice for the dining chair will be the Neva Chair, designed by Artisan. When you browse for furniture to start modeling or to pick your choice for modeling, always go for the ones that have enough images, can help you during your modeling process, to be as a reference, to guide you through the modeling, and also the one that have enough information regarding the dimension. We have also requested a 3D model of the chair from Artisan, so we can see if we can use it instead of modeling, but when we download the model, it was full of topology, and this is because it was exported from the original software, and during the pipeline, as you know, the topology get missing. So it is going to be very difficult to set the UVs on this model. And also, it's worth mentioning that as we are doing real-time rendering or real-time interactive with objects, in this example, it's always better to have a clean and less topology for the models. So we'll start by dragging our 3D cursor to the origin and add a plane. Let's set the size to 4 centimeters, 0.04. Zooming in on it, edit mode, select the face only, delete only faces by pressing X. Now I'm gonna select the edges, go into front mode, and then select all the edges, extrude it vertically by 55, and then drag it on the X-axis by pressing G up to this point. We need to add the curvy shape as it appears in the reference image. So selecting the edges, we're gonna go and select the spin tool and shift right click to bring the 3D cursor so the indicator will be on this point on the Y-axis, and let's click on the one of the circles and drag. So we're gonna keep the steps to 3, and this is better so we can have less number of polygons. Now extrude again, add a subdivision here, and now we need to create the other leg. So I'm gonna use the same base of the other leg. And then on this part, I'm gonna delete this face, the same way we did with the other one, and press F to connect the edges. Let's extrude this again, pressing Alt again and left click. Let's drag the upper part a little bit up. Select this part again. Now we need to create the back support of the chair. We can do that by selecting all the edges and again selecting the spin tool, but we need to find the middle point of the chair. So we need to create a plane. Let's put it, for example, by 50 centimeters. And we have already the 3D model as a reference on this part. And then I'm going to subdivide it to get the middle point of that part. And move the 3D cursor over here. Select the edges again. And then drag over this part. Now go into vertex mode, wireframe, select scale, and on the Y-axis, let's set the Y to 0, so we can have all the vertex on the same level. Now let's review on this side. If we are in the middle of that chair, we can actually adjust it over here. So I'm gonna adjust also the height based on that reference. Now we also can move the chair base a little bit to be on the same location as the 3D reference. I believe the front one is as it is. Now it's time to add a mirror modifier and a subdivision modifier. So I'm gonna move the 3D cursor to this point, and object set the origin to 3D cursor so we can apply the mirror from that point. On the y-axis, press on clipping and then add a subdivision surface, increase the level viewport to 2. Let's go into edit mode again, just to adjust some part of the chair. Alright, so let's add also a subdivision over here. Let's minimize the base of the chair. Then we're gonna do a little bit of tweaking until we reach to the same shape of that chair. So after a little bit of tweaking, using the 3D reference and the image, we have reached to an acceptable level of similarity between our model and the references. So let's add also the base. So I'm gonna delete this one because I need to add just a basic plane. I'm gonna take this and put it over the reference and just adjust it first based on that reference. So let's select the face again, delete only the face, select all the vertex, Ctrl+Shift+B. So to adjust the base, let's first fill it with a face. So I'm gonna select all the vertex and hit F. And then select the vertex that we need to connect and press J. Why press J? Because J can cut through the other edges that inside the face. Alright, so if you look at the reference images, we can see that the base is a little bit curvy from the middle. To create that curvy effect of the base, I'm going to select the middle vertex and then activate the proportional editing and then press on G on the Z axis and then increase the proportional size. Then we can add also a thickness by extruding all the faces. Let's say for example 0.025 and select the middle face, Alt S. Let's deactivate this first, Alt S, so we can extrude it on the normal side direction of each vertex. Then if we subdivide this. So I'm gonna add here another edge, Control R, and another one here. You can actually move the middle part by the right click and dissolve that edge. So to create also the support on the bottom, we can simply just select, for example, these vertices, Alright, so now it's time to create the UVs of this chair. If we look at the reference images that we have downloaded, you can see that the wood pattern of that chair have different direction on each part. The upper part from the legs, from the back. To adjust that, it's basically we need to separate the parts, these parts. And for the back, it will be as it is. Now, it's also worth mentioning that if you look closely, you can see that there's an edge, line edge, very visible on that. A useful tip for Quixel Mixer is that we need to use the curvature modifier inside Quixel Mixer to add some details like dusty or some really hard edges on the end of these parts. And to do that, Quixel Mixer need to have segments at the end of that part. So what we will do is select only the edges of this part, for example, and then Control E, extrude edges, Alt S, so it can be inside, and then select the upper part. I'm gonna just minimize this and bring the preview of the modifier, and Control B for that edge. So we need to make sure that we are getting the same values for all of them. Same goes for this one. So now that after we have separated these parts and added the bevel edge on each one of them, let's start by adding the UVs. Now, when we start to add the UVs, we need to understand that this specific wood texture need to have a pattern of the UVs. For example, if we bring the image editor here, if we bring the image reference, for example, if you look at this specific wood direction, let's create a new UV 4096 by 4096, and let's bring an image wood. So this is a wood texture that we will try to understand what exactly we need to do. First, we cannot have that part separated like that in the UVs, because this will mess up the UV texture inside Quixel and also in Unreal Engine. It needs to have a flow as in the reference image that we have downloaded. So to do that, a very simple solution to that, we will go through, for example, this part and go into edit mode, select the edges, Alt and left click, it will choose all of this part, and because we have another part here, it doesn't matter if it's in front of it or a little bit on the side. Selecting all of these edges, right click and mark seam. What mark seam is gonna do once we UV this, so I'm gonna select all and hit unwrap, and as you can see, it will unwrap this part perfectly on the UV texture. Now we can scale it and put the direction as we prefer to have it on the texture. So we will continue with the other parts of the chair and come back once we finish. So after we finished creating a seam on top of each part of the chair, we have merged the whole structure of the chair base by pressing Ctrl J. Now let's create a simple material for each element that we need to texture inside Quixel Mixer. This is really useful to have each part of the chair as a separate part, so we can bring these actually together. Ctrl J, and let's create a material. Let's call this, for example, wood, and for this one it's gonna be fabric, and the metal part on the end of the chair. Okay, so next we're gonna export this as an OBJ and import it inside Quixel Mixer. So inside Quixel Mixer, after we have created a new file and imported our OBJ model by going to type, select custom model, import, I have also increased the scale factor to 10, so it will be much easier once we start to zoom in. So inside our layer we have 3 separate layers, which is the wood, the base of the chair, the fabric, the metal. We'll start with the wood by adding a material that we have imported earlier. You can find some really useful textures from FreePick. I'm gonna put a link in the description. And once you download these textures, for example, you can create a normal map and a reflection map inside Photoshop, for example, and then set up them as a square dimension, 4096 for example, and import them inside Quixel Mixer. So the first thing we're gonna need to do is set the placement to tiling, and as you can see, we need to rotate the material correctly because it's not oriented correctly. We can do that by going back to Blender, or we can do it here, but it's much easier to do it in Quixel Mixer. So we can also adjust the roughness a little bit, increase it, so to get this effect. And then let's add the curvature effect that we have mentioned earlier. So I'm gonna use a smart material, which is available inside Quixel Mixer. And then I'm gonna go inside the scratch material and delete that mask and create another one actually that I wanna adjust. And then go here to add a curvature modifier. So immediately we can start to see the effect on the edges that we have created in Blender. So next let's adjust the color a little bit to make it black, for example, and control the appearance of this by dragging the levels. So I'm gonna disable the soft mesh again. This looks much better. And then add a few extra details, for example. And then also adjust the scratched paint material or tiling effect. Activate the albedo And let's also add a mask to this one. So as you can see, it's really useful to have extra details on top of the texture. We can control the contrast and the opacity of this one. Let's increase the scale a little bit. Alright, so as for the fabric, we're gonna create another layer set and then choose the fabric only, and I'm gonna choose a leather material. Disable the displacement from this one. Tiling, increase the scale, and also change the albedo color to something near a gray blue color, something like that. I'm gonna decrease the normals a little bit, and still I need to increase this. I'm gonna bring the roughness to the darker color so we can have more leather effect. And then if you have looked on our reference images, there's some stitch effect on top of this fabric seat. To do this in Quixel Mixer, what we need to add is a paint layer, and we're gonna add a texture, and you can find lots of these textures for free. So by pressing A and dragging the middle mouse button, we can start to add some paint effect on top of the texture. So we need to minimize the displacement effect, let's say for example 0.03, and let's make sure it's coming on the upper Z value. So by going into zooming in, let's make it for example 0.05. Minimize the size by pressing S again with the middle mouse button, and then we can start to paint that stitch effect on top of the texture. And once we're done, we can now start to export our texture that we have created from the export to our location, and we're gonna choose a 4K texture size. So we're gonna export this and then go inside Blender where we added our texture. I'm gonna remove the wireframe from this, and this is where we got after applying the materials. So this is not just a simple diffuse material without the normal effect. Now we can start exporting this to Unreal Engine. So inside Unreal Engine, after importing our dining set as a datasmith file from Blender, we have edited up the material. So I'm gonna just choose the chair material. What we did is we brought our textures and connect the three textures, which is the metal, the roughness, and the normals, to a multiplier with a scalar parameter. Only the normal, we have connected this to a flattened normal so we can have better control over the normal with a scalar parameter. And the diffuse, we didn't actually change it. And then we applied the material on our model. The UVs, when we imported the datasmith, we did not actually generate any UVs, so we kept what we had created inside Blender. And as you can see, with Lumen enabled, I'm gonna just disable the shadow of the ray trace so it can go through the glass. So testing this with the sun lighting direction, we can see that the textures, when it get affected by the light, get more realistic, with more effort can be put in, to get better result. Especially also if we increase the screen percentage, let's say for example to 150, you can start to see more improvements on the texture review. So hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any question, please share it down in the comments. In our next tutorial we'll move to another set of furniture. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.